Welcome to This Explainer. I'm Dr. Chem. Today, we're diving straight into the absolutely incredible, honestly futuristic world of inductively coupled plasma optical emission spectroscopy. Yeah, ICP-OES for short. We're going to see how we use glowing electric blue argon plasma and some seriously precise optics to unlock the hidden elemental makeup of matter itself. From finding trace heavy metals in our environment to verifying life-saving pharmaceuticals, this is literally our ultimate elemental magnifying glass. Okay, here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the power of plasma, then the anatomy of the instrument, followed by the journey of a sample. After that, we'll decode the light, and finally, wrap up with why this is the ultimate analytical tool. So let's jump right into part one, the power of plasma. Before we even touch the machine itself, we really need to understand the fiery heart that powers the whole thing. If you pump enough energy into a gas, it transforms into a physical plasma, the fourth state of matter, right after solid, liquid, and gas. But what makes plasma so uniquely powerful is that it's packed with free electrons and positively charged ions. Because of these charged particles, the plasma actually interacts dynamically with electric and magnetic fields. We can literally mold and shape this fiery cloud using invisible magnetic forces. Physicists have known about this for over 150 years, but actually harnessing it? Well, that was a whole different beast. The evolution here is just a fascinating leap from theoretical physics to hardcore practical analytical chemistry. It all kicked off back in 1927, when J.J. Thomson discovered electron processes inside plasmas. Just a year later, Irving Langmuir officially coined the word plasma to describe this glowing, ionized gas. But, it kind of stayed stuck in the physics realm for decades. The massive breakthrough for us in analytical chemistry finally hit in the 1960s. In 1964, Greenfield built the first high-power 3-kilowatt ICP meant specifically for analysis. And then in '65, Wendt and Fassel published their foundational work on a lower power, 1 to 2 kilowatt argon plasma. They basically proved we could maintain this extreme energy right on a lab bench. And we really need to talk about the sheer scale of the energy we're dealing with here, because it is staggering. This analytical plasma reaches blistering temperatures. We're talking anywhere from 6,000 to 10,000 Kelvin. To put that into perspective, we are basically trapping heat that rivals the surface of the sun, and we're keeping it inside a laboratory box. Containing that kind of stellar energy safely on a benchtop is absolutely a marvel of modern engineering. Which brings us perfectly to part two, anatomy of the instrument. So how exactly do we harness that sun-like heat without, melting everything? Looking back at the historical context is super revealing. The early experimental plasma sources and spectral burners from the 50s and 60s were pretty rudimentary. They were just trying to maintain an induction plasma on a continuous stream of gas. They were complex, dangerously bulky, and required some incredibly delicate tweaking just to keep the plasma ignited without destroying the surrounding equipment. Thankfully, today, that clunky, dangerous early science has been refined into the sleek, modern ICP-OES systems we use now, like the ones from Agilent or Horiba. Inside these highly engineered boxes, 5 specific components work together flawlessly, kind of like a perfectly synchronized relay team. The liquid sample is the baton. It hits the nebulizer, passes through the spray chamber, and gets tossed right into the glowing plasma torch. The light that's created then shoots into the optical spectrometer and finally strikes the detector at the finish line. Every single runner has to perform perfectly.
Let's track that baton in part 3, Journey of a Sample.
Let's actually trace the journey of a single sample. Imagine just a tiny droplet of your drinking water making its way through this futuristic gauntlet. First things first, we absolutely have to transform that liquid into a perfectly filtered microscopic aerosol. If we don't, it'll never survive the plasma. The liquid gets pumped into the nebulizer, where a high-pressure blast of argon gas violently shatters it into a fine mist. That mist then spirals into a glass spray chamber. Inside, gravity and flow dynamics team up to condense the larger droplets, draining them away as waste. This strict sorting process ensures that only the absolute finest, most uniform aerosol floats upward and into the torch. Once inside the torch, that's where the magic really happens. A radio frequency generator powers a metal coil wrapped tightly around the glass. A spark creates the initial argon ions, and then the alternating magnetic field from the coil whips those charged particles into an absolute frenzy. They're colliding constantly, which generates the incredibly hot, glowing plasma. When our sample's fine aerosol hits that 10,000 Kelvin inferno, the water solvent vaporizes instantly. The molecules are violently ripped apart into individual atoms and ions. The immense heat literally forces their outer electrons to jump up to higher, incredibly unstable energy levels. And that sets up part 4, decoding the light. Because what goes up must come down, right? As those excited electrons inevitably crash back down to their stable ground state, they release all that stored energy as photons. They emit light at highly specific wavelengths, and these act like unique elemental fingerprints. To decode this glowing light, we rely on something called shell optics. Now, instead of projecting a simple, straight rainbow line like a standard prism would, a cross disperser creates a two-dimensional spectrum. You actually read the spectrum going across and then down in a series of lines, literally just like reading text on a page of a book. It's a remarkably compact trick to fit a massive optical range into a really small space. And we need that range because we're often analyzing really complex environmental or biological mixtures packed with dozens of different elements. These atoms can emit light at wavelengths that are incredibly close to one another. We rely heavily on precise optical resolution to separate and identify these sharp, glowing peaks without any confusion. For example, evaluating the full width at half height proves an instrument's ability to distinctly separate nearly overlapping signals like arsenic and cadmium. That absolute precision ensures we don't accidentally mistake a totally harmless element for a highly toxic one. But condensing the light into this compact format definitely comes with some specific drawbacks. The system basically stacks 50 to 120 optical layers, or orders, on top of one another. As you move to higher wavelengths, that optical resolution naturally starts to degrade. Plus, the overlapping nature of the light path can create stray light and blurred aberrations right at the edges of the spectrum. All this optical noise significantly worsens our precision, making it so much harder to pick out extremely low concentration trace signals from the background static. This actually creates a physical phenomenon known as order hopping. If we track the wavelength efficiency curve of a shell spectrometer, it is definitely not a smooth line. Instead, the signal intensity goes through these dramatic peaks and valleys. Those valleys, they represent actual signal holes, where the amount of light making it to the detector just drops off a cliff right before the optics hop to the next overlapping order. Because of this chaotic order hopping, shell spectrometers are forced to use tiny 0.2 millimeter slit heights. This is to prevent the multiple spectra from bleeding into each other and turning into a blurry mess. But, as you can probably guess, restricting the slit size severely limits the total amount of light that actually hits the detector. Especially when you compare it to classical optic designs, which can let in way more light for a much stronger signal. So, to capture whatever precious light does make it through that tiny slit, we have to choose our detector technology very carefully. Historically, scientists relied on charge-coupled devices, or CCDs. These act kind of like a highly deliberate relay race, sequentially shifting electrical charges row by row to ensure extreme accuracy. Modern systems, however, are shifting towards CMOS detectors. These feature parallel processing with localized amplifiers right on the pixel itself. CMOS sensors read the incoming light in rapid arrays, giving us incredible speed and the versatility we need when we're trying to find ultratrace elements right next to highly concentrated ones in the exact same sample. Finally, let's wrap up with part 5, the ultimate analytical tool. So, why do we go to such immense technical lengths? Why build a complex machine that atomizes liquids in 10,000-degree plasma just to read tiny flashes of light? Well, because this multi-element detection protects our physical world on a massive scale. Think about environmental monitoring. An ICP-OES can rapidly screen municipal drinking water to make absolutely sure there is no toxic lead or arsenic reaching your tap. In pharmaceutical quality control, it verifies that raw chemical ingredients are pure and free from heavy metal catalysts before they become life-saving drugs. From tracking vital phosphorus levels in global food safety to monitoring massive industrial metallurgy processes, this technology is literally the invisible shield guarding our modern supply chains. Now, when scientists are outfitting a modern laboratory, they often compare analytical tools. Atomic absorption spectroscopy, or AAS, is great for checking single elements on a budget. But for the heavy lifting, we look at the plasma techniques. ICP-OES gives us incredibly fast, simultaneous readings across dozens of elements at once using those light wavelengths. Meanwhile, its close cousin, ICP-MS, uses the exact same argon plasma source, but swaps the optical spectrometer for a mass spectrometer. ICP-MS extracts the actual ions to look at specific isotopes, which gives you even deeper sensitivity. But for rapid, robust, multi-element screening across a massive range of concentrations, ICP-OES remains the undisputed workhorse. The precision of light really is the absolute key to unlocking the true composition of matter. By capturing and decoding those distinct atomic fingerprints left behind in the vibrant glow of the plasma, we gain total elemental clarity about the world we live in. Which leaves us with a pretty provocative thought. What hidden, invisible elements are lurking in your daily drinking water right now, just waiting to be illuminated? Keep questioning and keep exploring the elements around you.